Welcome back. We've spent several episodes understanding the mechanisms of stress and sleep. Today, Tahya and Raffaele confront what happens when stress isn't addressed, when it becomes chronic, compounding, and systemic. This is the episode about long-term consequences, about what chronic stress does to your cardiovascular system, your immune function, your metabolism, your brain, about the real science behind burnout, and about the inflammation connection, which links stress, sleep, and disease risk in ways that should make this a priority for everyone listening. It's also where we go deeper on two supplements with genuine clinical evidence, ashwagandha and magnesium threonate, and where Tahya connects the inflammation story directly to why anti-inflammatory support matters in this cycle.
Raffaele, I want to open with something that I think is important context for this episode. When we talk about chronic stress, we're not talking about a personality trait or a lifestyle choice. We're talking about a physiological state with measurable biological consequences. I want to make sure that framing is clear before we start.
That matters a lot because there's still a culture undercurrent that chronic stress is just about not being resilient enough. And that's both scientifically wrong and genuinely harmful. The body doesn't distinguish between valid stress and invalid stress. Sustained activation of the HPA axis does what it does, regardless of whether you feel like you should be able to handle it.
Exactly. So let's talk about what it actually does, because the downstream consequences of chronic stress extend well beyond mood and energy. The concept I want to start with is allostatic load, the cumulative biological cost of chronic stress on the body. Think of it as wear and tear on your systems from sustained activation of stress responses over time. Chronically elevated cortisol suppresses immune function, specifically cell-mediated immunity. That's why chronically stressed people get sick more often, heal more slowly, and respond less robustly to vaccines. The immune system is being downregulated by prolonged cortisol exposure. It also affects the cardiovascular system. Chronic stress increases blood pressure, promotes arterial inflammation, and dysregulates lipid profiles. The data on psychosocial stress as a cardiovascular risk factor is robust. It's not soft science, it's in major cardiology literature. And metabolically, cortisol drives glucose mobilization and over time promotes insulin resistance, visceral fat accumulation, and the metabolic syndrome picture. The stress belly isn't a myth. It's a cortisol-driven adipogenesis at its visceral level.
And the brain doesn't escape either. Chronic stress causes structural changes in the hippocampus, the memory and emotional regulation center, through glucocorticoid-mediated neural damage. This is why people under chronic stress describe brain fog, memory problems, difficulty concentrating. It's not just tiredness, there's actual structural correlations. From a functional medicine standpoint, one of the most important things I look at with clients is the inflammation picture, because it's the common thread that links stress to so many downstream disease processes. Chronic stress drives up inflammatory cytokines, and chronic inflammation is now understood to be a driver of depression, cognitive decline, metabolic disease, and immune dysfunction. It's all connected.
This is where I want to bring in the inflammation-sleep connection explicitly because it's the core of the whole series. Elevated inflammatory markers, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and C-reactive protein directly impair sleep architecture. So the stress drives inflammation, inflammation disrupts sleep, disrupted sleep elevates cortisol, cortisol drives more inflammation. That's the full loop. And this is why at Pasmora we take the anti-inflammatory angle seriously in our formulations. Our Insight product is built specifically around addressing inflammation as a root driver, not just symptom suppression, but targeting the mechanisms that are driving the inflammatory cascade. When you address inflammation in someone who's caught in the cycle, you can interrupt it at multiple points simultaneously.
I want to talk about burnout and adrenal fatigue here, because there's a lot of controversy, and I want to get our listeners to a clear picture of what the evidence actually says. Burnout is real. It's a recognized syndrome characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced sense of personal accomplishment, now formally included in the WHO's International Classification of Diseases. It has a measurable physiological correlation, including that flattened cortisol curve we discussed in episode 2, blunted morning cortisol, blunted HPA reactivity. Adrenal fatigue as a distinct medical diagnosis is more controversial. The adrenal glands don't fatigue in most cases, but what is real and measurable is HPA axis dysregulation and the functional state that results. The symptoms people describe under that label, exhaustion, salt cravings, difficult recovering from stress, are real. The mechanisms may be more nuanced than the label implies.
That's a fair and accurate framing. And from a clinical standpoint, what matters more than the label is the pattern. Does someone have a flattened cortisol curve, poor stress resilience, high inflammatory markers, disrupted sleep? Those are addressable regardless of what you call the underlying state. Let's build on the ashwagandha conversation from episode 2 and go deeper on the evidence for chronic stress specifically, because there's a difference between general adaptogenic effects and specific evidence for the burnout and chronic stress picture. A 2019 study in Medicine found that ashwagandha supplementation at 240 milligrams per day over 60 days produced significant reductions in cortisol, perceived stress, and anxiety compared to placebo in chronically stressed adults. These are people living real-life, stressful lives, not a controlled lab stressor. That clinical relevance matters. The other supplement I want to highlight for this episode specifically is magnesium threonate, also called magnesium L-threonate. What distinguishes it is its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms. Animal studies have shown it can increase synaptic density in the hippocampus and improve cognitive function. Human data is still emerging but promising, particularly for stress-related cognitive decline and anxiety.
And from a protocol standpoint, the way I think about this is layered. Ashwagandha for HPA axis modulation and cortisol normalization, magnesium threonate for the neurological and cognitive piece, and then anti-inflammatory support, whether through targeted formulations like what Tahya's team has developed at Bosmora, or through diet, or ideally through both, to address the inflammation driver that's underneath all of it. For people in the acute stress or the burnout picture, I'd also include a quality B complex, because B vitamins, particularly B5, B6, and B12, are heavily involved in adrenal hormone synthesis and are depleted rapidly under chronic stress. That's something I carry at 1H Scripts precisely because it's fundamental and it's often overlooked.
That's episode 5. Chronic stress isn't just feeling overwhelmed, it's a measurable biological state with consequences across virtually every system in your body. The good news is, the tools to address it are real, evidence-based, and accessible. Next episode, we go somewhere unexpected. Your gut. The gut-brain sleep connection is one of the most exciting and emerging areas in health science, and it changes how you think about solving the sleep-stress cycle from the inside out. Bosmore.com and 1hscripts.com, links in the show notes. See you next week.